Hello and welcome wherever you are in the world today. So maybe good morning, maybe good afternoon, and welcome to Shutterstock's Gen AI webinar series. We do this every month, sometimes multiple times a month with different topics and different themes. If you have been here before, welcome back because we do see many similar faces as you're learning Gen AI and you're brushing up your skill set. Many of you have attended this before. I am your host. My name is Tanya. I'm with Shutterstock, and we've got the brilliant Cal Roberts who will take us through the platform. Today, we're going to be focusing on the general features and functionality. So we'll do a quick run through of all of the top highlights using Shutterstock Generative AI. And then we're going to spend a little bit more time focusing on the text or image to video parts of our platform. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation. Before we get started, we like to get to know the audience just a little bit. So we're going to do two things. One is the Q&A is open and also the chat. So it's two different features of Zoom. But if you want to open up the chat, should be a button sort of at the bottom of your screen and let us know where you're calling in from today. Where are you joining us from? Would love to just see where you're calling in. We love to see who's the furthest away from us. Evan is in Los Angeles. Jean or Jean from Maryland. We've got Dallas, Ireland, Myrtle Beach. Cal and I are both in New York. So we've got someone from the Philippines, Brazil, Warsaw. Okay, what a great crowd. You're from all over. Oh, someone from the Bronx. Hello, Rick from the Bronx. Slovenia, Ola from Mexico. Hi, Adrian. Okay, perfect. We've got a really good crowd, so welcome. And then I am going to close the chat and I'm going to have the rest of you use the Q&A. Basically, Q&A is you can submit any questions that you want. I'm actually going to be working in the background. I'll answer some of the questions. If we see like a theme coming up, many of you have the same questions. I'm going to ask Cal to take those maybe live and directly. Before we do that, I do have a quick poll question as well. So the poll works like this. I'm going to launch the poll. You're going to see it on your screen. You can click using your keyboard, and you should see that now. But just quick, on a scale of 1 to 5, what do you think your comfort level is with Shutterstock Generative? Have you used it? You're not comfortable, extremely comfortable, maybe you're a power user. And then are you using any generative tools today? So we've got a couple, maybe Shutterstock, Midjourney, Runway, Adobe Firefly. Go ahead and take some of these poll questions. How would you rank the importance of some of the feature functionality or Gen AI tool? How would you rank them as important as part of your business? There's some options. Go ahead and feel free to take some of these poll questions. This actually helps Cal think about how you've answered some of these questions, and then we'll take that into consideration as we move through the presentation, because if everyone is, majority of people are really not very comfortable, maybe there's some places, some tips and tricks we can leave you as a new person to Shutterstock. But, if you're a power user, it looks like 41% of you feel very comfortable or not comfortable at all. So, we've got some new people. It looks like we got a good mix of people using or dabbling in quite a number of different Gen AI tools, which is great. And then when it comes to prioritizing some of the things that you feel are important, we're talking quality, rights and protections, licensing, things like that. Go ahead and type those in. I'm going to, it looks like about half of you have participated in the poll. I'm going to give you just about 10 more seconds if you want to pop in there and just answer some of these questions. That would be great. Okay, I am going to close the poll, so that will end now. So thank you for participating. Now I'm actually going to record this. You will get a copy of the recording in a follow-up email. So you'll get a quick survey, tell us how we did, and then you're also going to get a little bit of information. So a copy of the presentation as well as the recording. So next I will pass it over to Cal. Take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Cal Roberts. I'm the Director of Creative Strategy here at Shutterstock. So I work with a wide variety of customers ranging from agencies, production houses, studios, individual brands, to really understand any and all of their creative needs. How are they using stock content? What are they producing in-house? What are they using Gen AI for? Increasingly, it's kind of a hybrid approach between some of these three different kind of buckets. So what I'm going to do today is really just walk you through overall platform architecture and then specifically as it pertains to video, and then some tips and tricks along the way, whether you're just getting started or a little bit more advanced. I think either way, this will give you a better understanding of how we've built out our platform, and then with video specifically, how you can maximize that. So as Tanya mentioned, feel free to drop any questions into Q&A. She'll be in the background working on those. And then at the end, we can kind of circle back with any that are kind of outstanding and answer those live. But with that, I'm just going to start sharing my screen and we can get right into it. So let me do that now. And Tanya, if you could just give me the verbal heads up when you can see my screen.
Yeah, sure. All right, we see your screen, not in presentation mode, but we do see your screen.
Now
Perfect.
it's now in presentation mode.
Yep, ready to go.
All right, perfect. So again, just very briefly going over the fundamentals of the platform. Some of you have perhaps heard this already, but it's just a refresher around, again, how we've built out the platform specifically as it pertains to video is what our conversation is going to be about today. Walk you through how to build out prompts, use some of the features that we have on the platform, and then show you what it actually looks like in action. But again, so perhaps this is not necessarily new information, or perhaps it is if this is your first time hearing about Shutterstock. But regardless, for both imagery and video, our approach is model aggregation. So for example, on the image side, we've got top models from Nano Banana, ChatGPT, Runway. On the video side, we've got models from Runway, Google Veo, Sora. So each one of these models has been really carefully sourced to fit an individual aesthetic niche. What one model is going to excel in, maybe another one won't because it's trained on its own subset of reference images, videos, materials, etc. So it's really important to have different models at your disposal relative to what you're looking to actually achieve visually. However, it's all for naught if you can't actually use the content that these amazing models are generating in a commercial capacity. So regardless of what model created your image, vector, video, it can be put through a human review process, after which point, if we identify that there's no IP considerations, it can carry full indemnification on top of the ability to license that actual asset. So you can license anything that you generate on our platform, but then if you want indemnification on top of it, that's where the human review team comes in. And the last time we had one of these, last time we spoke, this human review process was only in place on imagery. Now it is also in place on video as well for enterprise plans, and for core plans, it's available as an additional kind of package as well. So again, this is really kind of one of the backbones of our platform. So did just want to call out what this process looks like. What does it entail? How do you trigger it? So again, when you're on one of those enterprise plans, essentially, if you add an image, a vector, a video to a shopping cart, you download a comp, or you save it to a collection, any one of those would trigger the human review team to take a look at that asset. And they're not only going to look at the actual image or video that you've generated to ensure that there's no logos, celebrity likenesses, copywritten materials, etc. They're also going to look at the prompt that you use to ensure that there's no IP there. So for example, if I were to say I'm looking for a video of a man reading his email on his phone, probably fine, in terms of the actual prompt itself. The prompt itself is perfect. If we were to say video of a man checking his email on his iPhone, we wouldn't be able to indemnify that because that contains IP. So this is going to give you that peace of mind from both that which you've generated and also that which you're using to generate that particular asset, that it's cleared for commercial use. So that process, we have to say, maxes out at 48 hours. In my experience, you may have heard this before, if you've attended previous webinars, it's around like 6 or 7 hours from when that process is kicked off to when it's complete, and you'll get an email notification telling you what the status of that asset is. And then again, once it's been approved, you can essentially just consider it a non-editorial Shutterstock image under your MSA from pricing, use case, indemnification standpoint. But it's really almost like a mini exclusive license because, again, if it's on an enterprise plan, no one else can see that individual asset. No one else can license it. So it's really unique to your organization. So that's really the backbone of our overall Gen AI platform, model aggregation, and then this commercially viable approach. So now let's get into video specifically. But first, I did just want to pause briefly and talk just generally about where video is at with regards to Gen AI. So anecdotally, I would say that video for Gen AI, just across the board, regardless of whether you're looking at Shutterstock or pretty much any platform out there right now, is almost where imagery was at 8 months, a year ago. So it's definitely not quite where imagery is. However, you can still create really amazing content with it. You just have to understand when to use it and how to use it. Because if you're expecting to use Gen AI to generate like crystal clear 4K quality video, like we're still a little bit of ways away from that. So what it's really good for is creating bite-sized things for social, or elements that you can then fuse into other videos, or things that play in backgrounds, things like that. So again, not to say that you can't create really amazing things with Gen AI video, but it does take a little bit more practice and understanding as to how to use some of the various features within the actual platform. And again, that's not unique to Shutterstock. That is really just where the technology is at a whole. So how do we maximize the existing technology that we have today? So when you're generating video, and I'll show you what this looks like in action on the actual platform momentarily, but really there's kind of two flavors as to how you can generate video. The first of which is to just use a prompt and only use keywords. Any advanced video prompter will tell you that that is not the best approach. The better approach is to use a first frame reference, where you're arming the model with some existing visual kind of direction, and then all you have to do is really spend the bulk of your prompt discussing the actual dynamism of the scene, the camera movement, the action, as it were. Because if you think about it, it essentially has to do two things if you're just using keywords. It has to generate a baseline image and then all of these other images on top of it and the action and the animation. So it can get a little bit bogged down in that. So you can create amazing content using just keywords, but really the better approach is to use a first frame reference. And on our platform, you just have to use a licensed image. So you've licensed it from Stockhouse, you've produced it in-house, or it's one that you've generated on our platform and then licensed. So this is going to give you a much better way of really getting to that end result without having to burn through a ton of generations or, pull your hair out working on all of these different edits. So really using that baseline image to get you further along is the better approach. So just in terms of how we start to wrap our head around, okay, how do we create a really good baseline image? Did just want to talk very briefly about our content reference feature on the image side, because a lot of this is going to then inform the video side as well. Or if you're just interested in it for imagery, this applies as well. So if you used our content reference feature before, don't know what it is, this is essentially allowing you to take existing content that, again, you own the rights to in some capacity and fuse different elements of those assets together within our image generator. And right now you are limited, quote unquote, to 3 individual images that you can upload. However, one of those images can contain multiple things. So in this case, we uploaded one image of this woman here, and then a set of these tiles of patterns in this other thing, and we're able to fuse those together using the prompt. And again, this is really going to help with video, and I'll show you momentarily what that actually looks like. So this is kind of a way around the 3 image limitation, and it's going to allow you to create much more complex things to start from on the image side, which then will again allow you to create much more advanced videos, particularly as it pertains to fusing different products together. So in this case, we took this woman here and this product and fused them together within our AI image generator. And then we dropped it into video. So this right here is starting to get into the happy medium where you're really going to get amazing results, where not only are you using a first frame reference, but you're using a pretty detailed prompt on top of it. That's really the sweet spot. That's where you're going to get truly amazing results. So I'll show you, different flavors as to how you can actually generate all of these different things on the platform. But this should be your end goal, one day. Again, you're not going to start using the platform right away and understand how to create a great first frame reference and then a great prompt on top of it. It will take a little bit of time, but I promise it will become second nature eventually. And really, the fundamental aspect around how you want to build out a prompt. So this applies especially, obviously, if you're only using keywords. But even then, if you're using a first frame reference as well, this can help. So if you don't have a first frame reference, this is what you should be thinking about. Just taking nothing for granted, really describing in finite detail what you're looking for. So describing the scene, taking nothing for granted. I'm looking for a photo, or if it's a video, is it a time lapse? Is it a stop motion kind of aesthetic? Really spelling it out for the models and the generators such that they're not going to be inventing details on the back end. So I'm going to show you what it looks like when you just generate a video using a really basic prompt. Spoiler alert, it's not going to be that good. So this is why detail is so important, because it's going to allow you to control each one of those elements of your actual end piece of content. And then if you want to make adjustments, you can just change those one individual aspects that you want to change while maintaining all the other aspects. So bracketing things out in commas, this is going to give you the best overall approach. And then specifically with video, you want to spend a lot of the actual prompt. Doesn't matter if you're building the prompt, totally from scratch using that to generate the entire video, or you're building it on top of a first frame reference. You want to spend a lot of that prompt describing things like the camera movement, the subject motion, and the action, and then the overall atmosphere. Is it, cinematic? Does it feel a little bit more UGC? So as Tanya mentioned, we're going to send this out after the fact, but these are some keywords and just terminology that I found really beneficial, specifically as it pertains to generating video. So it's going to become second nature over time. You'll find that you're repeating certain things, but really this is a great way to kind of get into action, as it were, generating video. So with that, let's actually hop into the platform and start to do some of this video work live. So I'm going to start off with that example that I mentioned around if you just use keywords and no first frame reference, how it can look a little rough, shall we say. So I'm just going to say a volcano erupting. Now, again, I'm not using any first frame reference, and then did just want to call out here. In terms of generating video, you're going to get two different video, options every time you run a generation, and it will count as 10 generation credits. On the image side, it'll count as 1 credit, and then you'll get 4 different options. And you can reach out to your rep. We have different plans, some of which are unlimited, so it's not even a consideration. Others are 1,000 a month, etc. So I'm just going to generate that video of a volcano erupting. And then while I'm doing that, I'm also going to then do one using a first frame reference. So this is where I'm actually taking an image that I've uploaded. Again, I own the rights to this image in some capacity, licensed it from stock provider. I've generated it on our platform and then licensed it. I produced it in-house. I own the rights to the image. So I'm going to select the image of this volcano erupting right here. This is a real photograph of a volcano erupting. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing. So the volcano erupts. And then you're going to be able to see the difference between when you're able to arm the generator with an existing piece of content, where when you're just starting from scratch using the keywords, it might struggle a little bit. So I'm also going to then, while that's generating, do another one where let's use this woman right here. Again, going to confirm that I own the rights. And then all I'm going to do is do something very, very simple with this one. So let's just say the woman walks down the street. And I'm going to change the aspect ratio to 16:9. We have 2 options here in terms of the duration. So either 4 to 5 seconds, 8 to 12 seconds. Doesn't matter. Either one will count as 10 generation credits. Same thing if I select a first frame reference or what aspect ratio, it's still just going to count as 10 generation credits on the back end. So let's see if these things are generating right here. So this is when I just said a volcano erupting. Now, this looks a little cheesy to me, frankly. This looks, a little bit dated. So this is why, yes, you can use keywords, but if you only are using keywords, you have to use a lot of them. And I'll show you like how you can create amazing things using only keywords. But it really is going to be a lot easier if you start with that first frame reference. As I showed here, like look how much better this one looks and this one as well. So much more realistic and nuanced because I'm starting with that first frame reference. So the ability to generate something only using keywords can be done. So for example, this is one that I generated using only keywords. This was actually almost 800 characters. If you'll see here, we now have a character kind of marker where you can live see how many remaining characters you have left. The limit is now 1800, so that's going to give you a lot more flexibility to create pretty advanced prompts. But here, I really do like the aesthetic of this video. Really, really good. Describing the camera movement. It does look realistic. However, I've had to use so much descriptors here. So it's possible, but it's not as user-friendly to just generate everything totally bespoke from scratch using keywords. So what you can do is, again, take an offset image, for example. I downloaded this image from our offset collection, this really complex lifestyle scene using a first frame reference. And then all I had to do was describe the actual motion and the animation. So handheld tracking shot. Again, those are some keywords that are going to be contained in that document that I referenced earlier. So what you really just have to do is describe the action once you've armed it with a first frame reference. The generators are not so good at creating a baseline thing that looks really realistic to start from unless you're using a lot of descriptors as in here. So definitely when you can, use that first frame reference. And in terms of, can you still see my screen, Tanya?
Yes, you paused for like a hot second and your camera's frozen, so I don't know if you want to come off camera and then come back on. We also do still see your screen. It might be frozen. I don't know if you have the ability to refresh or not.
Okay, what about now?
Yep, still see your screen, but it looks like it's struggling a little bit.
All right. Sorry, little tech problems here. Let me refresh.
Okay. We definitely still see it, but it looks frozen.
Let me stop sharing my screen and then hop back in.
Yeah, no problem. In the meantime, we did get a few questions, and I'm happy to take those since many of you may have the same question. So Wesley asked, hey, if you want to reference a specific brand model, so earlier Cal had mentioned the scenario with the iPhone, for example. In the prompt, can I say something like using a cell phone similar to an iPhone? You can. There's nothing that stops you in terms of when you go to prompt, there's nothing that's going to stop you from saying, I want to place an image similar to an iPhone. However, what might happen is you might get an actual iPhone, one, which would be IP infringe. You'd be infringing upon the brand of the iPhone. And two, we also would, for example, if you have our feature called Human Review, which we've got experts on the back end that give you that added layer of security and protection, our team would review that, and we that would not pass our human review because you're using a protected brand like iPhone. So then you might say, well, how am I supposed to generate the vibe and feel that I'm looking for? There's ways to prompt around that. So customers very successfully can use things like using a modern cell phone in hand. And then also say no branding because you don't want logos and things like that because you certainly wouldn't want, Apple to see any of that. So there's a lot of ways that you can prompt around that. So that was one question that we got.
Can you see my screen again?
Yep, looks good.
All right, perfect. So sorry about that. My computer decided to do some random updates mid-presentation. It's always fun. But here is that example that I had, kind of started with earlier, where we just have to describe, once again, the actual animation that we're looking for. So you'll get two different options. Each of one will have a little subtle variance between the other. So this will give you a little bit of flexibility where you're not locked into one particular thing that you've actually started with. And then you can continue to kind of refine once you've generated something. So let's get a little bit more specific. So for this volcano one, let's say handheld camera zooms in slowly. And then I'm just going to change the duration to long on this one and let that generate in the background while I show you some other stuff. So in this one, this is just kind of a good example of something that you might want to use, especially for video, but even for imagery as well. So a lot of times when you've got something like this where someone's holding an object, it can feel really rigid. So what I've had to do in this case is in the actual prompt that I'm using, not only say that the woman's holding up this baby shirt, but holding it in the air ever so slightly and naturally, emphasizing how light the actual object is. So sometimes you're going to have to kind of cue and better interpret what the generator might stumble on. So, oh, okay, I know that it's going to give me, this kind of plasticky looking shirt. So I want to really talk about how light it is. So these are little things that you're going to discover over time that you kind of have to prompt and really think about how a generator would create something. It's a lot easier when you're working with something like this, where it's a little bit more abstract, or there's not a lifestyle element where if a person's hand isn't moving naturally, it's really easy to see that. So it's a little bit more forgiving when you're doing something that's more abstract or illustration based like this. But you really can get very specific, talking about like specific kind of things, almost like stop motion animation that you can do in there, all the way up to something like this. And what you're really going to have to do is think about pacing as well. So in many instances, I find that when you're generating something, the action is really slow. So a lot of times these models are trained off of content that's shot in slow motion. So it's going to have that look to it. So rapidly is a word that you're going to want to use a lot. So I tried using, the lizard's eye blinks, the lizard's eye closes, and it was really slow. It didn't feel true to life. So I had to tack on rapidly to the end there. And then this is an example of one video that we did actually for a fashion customer, where we actually generated this image on our image generator using that content reference feature that I mentioned, where we combined a bunch of things into one, and we used it as a first frame reference. And then on top of it, we used a relatively advanced detailed prompt, almost 700 characters. So this is really where you're able to truly maximize it to its fullest potential. And it really does come through in the video, where not only does it feel really realistic, it's nuanced. There's texture in the background. So again, you can create really cool stuff using just the keywords, using first frame reference and a super basic prompt like we just kind of showed. But to really get the most out of the technology, it's a fusion of the two. So don't be afraid to really experiment with both, but this is when you're going to get to that ultimate point of having a lot. And then we can see here, very, very subtle, but there is a zoom in the details in the mountains that you can see. So there's so much that you can do with regards to, working with the actual prompt that you're talking about. And then we also are looking at additional features in the future around last frame reference, different smart edit functionalities within the platform. So a lot that you can do, just always being mindful that depending on what plan you're on, it will count as 10 generation credits. But again, if you're on an unlimited plan, not even a consideration. So did just want to call that out. So really pretty amazing, unique things that you can do. And one thing that you might have noticed too is that there are some black borders around the edges. So if you are using a first frame reference and you don't want any of those black borders, just make sure that you crop the image to a 16:9 or 9:16 aspect ratio, and then you'll be able to get something that doesn't have any of those, edges to start off with. So for example, like when I cropped this one, I cropped it to almost 16:9, so we have very little bleed on the top. So just something to be mindful of when you're actually generating those assets. And then just from a workflow perspective, I do always like to call this out, that everything that you ever generate will be kept as its own little instance within our Shutterstock kind of history. So it doesn't matter if you're talking about image or video, you can filter by the actual asset type, and you can go back to that exact moment in time and essentially resume your creative process from there. So I was working on this last night. You can go right back to it. and resume your process from that exact moment. So really everything will be self-contained within history. You can search by keywords, etc. So did just want to call that out because with a lot of other platforms, it can be hard to kind of backtrack to a specific moment in time. But with us, everything will be kept in that history. So a lot of information, I realize, but again, we're going to share out that document with some of those really helpful keywords after the fact, how to use content reference to generate these baseline assets. But this should hopefully give you a sense as to just all of the different amazing kind of things that you can create with Gen AI video, regardless of the subject matter, whether it's nature, lifestyle, something that's a little bit more illustrative, something that's heavily realistic. Really, the technology is constantly evolving, so it's really enabling our creatives to use amazing starting content to create things that are perfect for social, again, those kind of bite-sized elements. And then, in a few months from now, a year from now, we'll be talking about that crystal clear 4K quality and things like that. So a lot of exciting things still to come. So Tanya, I'm not sure if we have any additional questions that I might be able to address.
Yeah. Let me go through here. A bunch of questions have come in. Let's just take this one. Um, okay, it says, "Hi, is there a chance to paste here the whole long prompt of the video of the father with the baby in his arms so that we can see how Cal creates a professional detailed prompt to have such a good cinematic shot only from text, thanks." And generally it'd be great to be able to read all the detailed prompts he creates, not only fragments. We get that question a lot. And Cal had mentioned we will send a copy of the presentation that will have some of these prompts so you can get the detailed information there. Or Cal, I don't know if you want to copy paste some of those prompts.
I'm seeing if I can put it in the webinar chat right now.
Yeah, yeah, and then Cal can just so that you can get a sense of how those prompts work, and then get a feel for all of that combination of camera angle and lighting and how people are positioned. He just dropped that into the chat for you right there, so you are good to go on that.
And also just on that, like it's not magic also. Like anyone who's an advanced prompter in any respect will also tell you that they're using AI to help them generate prompts as well. So sometimes, if you're looking at other, videos that people have generated using their free generation credits, or you can see what they're using. You can also talk with ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, to help you build out a prompt. So you don't have to just, use your own existing kind of artistic knowledge. You can also see what else is available out there to help you build out these prompts as well.
Yeah, and I don't know if you probably not because I don't recall, but I don't know if you demonstrated or if you want to share your screen and just show people the prompt enhancement feature. So there is built-in AI into the generating workflow where you can use our prompt enhancement feature that will then take maybe something a very basic prompt, and then we'll turn it into something more spectacular using a lot more descriptive. Sometimes if I'm not sure where to go, I'll use that prompt assistant feature, and then I'll just go back through what it created for me and just take out the things that I think are not applicable. So sometimes it'll add very descriptive language around sunset and mood. Maybe I don't want it to be at dawn. Maybe I want it to be at like twilight hour. So I'll just remove things that are not applicable to what I want, but it does give me a starting place and then also gives me a little bit to think about, like gets my creative juices going when I am unsure where to start. So give that prompt enhancement feature, and regardless of the plan you have, you should have that ability to do that. Okay, so there were some questions about licensing and generating and credits. And so I'll just go ahead and take those if you're okay with that, Cal. So
Yep, go for it.
there were questions about if I generate something, if I type in a prompt and I click generate, am I like what happens? What am I using? We very purposely have created the generating and the packaging to be really easy and not confusing. So what happens is anytime you click the generate or you go to edit, for example, you're going to be using 1 credit essentially. So if you, for example, let's say you typed in woman sitting on the beach, you click generate, that's 1 credit. If then you realize, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. She's not supposed to be on the beach. She's supposed to be at the supermarket. And then I change it from beach to supermarket. I click generate. That also is a credit. So think about every time you're generating, that's going to be using a credit. The difference is when you go to create video, it works the same way except for it's 10 credits. So same thing. If you're iterating on that prompt, the prompt language, and you're using video, it will use 10 credits or 10 generations of your plan when you're using video. So it's either going to be 1 or 10. Editing is also included in that. So if you're using the editing features, so you use Magic Brush or Smart Edit, and then you click go, that also is 1 credit. So that's how that prompting works. A question about aspect ratios. Can you export in different aspect ratios, Cal?
So you pre-select the aspect ratio and then you generate after the fact. You can, the only way to do it kind of like after the fact would be to take like a screen grab and then start from scratch and change it to a different one. But you would just pre-select the aspect ratio to begin with rather than at the end. And then it's 9:16 or 16:9.
There was a question that said, I did get some detailed questions around licensing and what's acceptable for commercial use and commercial video and models and positioning and things like that. And I sent them back privately. Someone asked, like, in the future, could we do maybe more a legal commercial type of webinar? It's a good idea. We've never done one right now. But we could definitely think about something that's more along those lines of like, what can you do and how can you do it and how can you do it safely and make sure you're adhering to our terms and conditions. So maybe we'll add that to our list. If you had asked some detailed questions about that, just know I am not part of our legal counsel, so I certainly don't want to give any legal advice. If you're unsure or you're feeling a little uneasy about maybe prompting in some of the things you've done about using a model or using certain brands, I would definitely, if you have a legal team or have counsel, you would definitely want to run it through them also. Heidi said, Cal, you have great presentation style. I know we love Cal. He is a fantastic presenter. Um, for sure, one of our favorites. Okay. I did answer a lot of our questions. I'm just going through the list just to see what else we have in here. Um, okay. All right. I think that takes us through most of it. Again, thank you for joining us and sharing a little bit of your time with us today. We hope you enjoyed the presentation, learned some cool tips and tricks from Cal, and we will be sending the recording. Cal did type in some of that prompt language if you wanted to grab, copy, paste that into the chat thread as well. And maybe we will see you in a future webinar. So thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks all. Take care.
Bye.